From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Hi again. Welcome to the show. George McGovern is dying. His family says he's in hospice care, and by the time you see this program, he may have already passed away. It's too easy in this cynical age to treat George McGovern as a joke. You know, he did lose to Richard Nixon by the largest margin in American history, but there are millions of us today who remember that 1972 campaign with some real fondness. I've been lucky that my life's had a lot of wonderful moments, but very few surpass that morning at sunrise, sitting on some beach in Los Angeles with a gaggle of campaign workers as the realization set in that we had just won the California primary. And that meant that our guy had enough delegates that he really would win the nomination, or at least probably, and he did. It was a moment when fairly innocent people, today we'd just call them naive, believed that endless war spilling untold amounts of American blood and treasures could and should be stopped. And this new president, we thought, could restore sanity to our budget priorities and refocus America on the needs at home. There were even some of us who thought that racial and gender equality was within reach if McGovern could just get elected. I know it's hard to believe that now that we see the Obama campaign's new media gurus snatching up the URL bindersfulofwomen.net and creating an online meme within 90 seconds of Romney uttering the words. It's hard to remember that our campaign office had no electricity in Los Angeles and that we worked into the night by candlelight, filling out our door knock sheets for the next day by hand. Okay, we didn't win, but I know I'm not the only one who spent much of his life in and around politics and public service because Senator McGovern inspired us to do it. So, George, thank you, and may you rest in peace. Okay, now back to the cash-drenched, micromanaged, warp-speed politics world of the real world that we live in today, and who better to help us understand that than our old friend Ben Joravsky from The Reader, who will inject a dose of reality, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, I think, first of all, I love George McGovern.
And may I say, Miguel del Valle, also joining us here today.
But wait, I don't believe he lost by the greatest margin. Didn't Roosevelt defeat Alf Landon by a greater margin? Just to correct your essay.
Really? You mean for 40 years I've believed that we had
that up. I actually had no idea.
It could be.
But I love
I
George
just
McGovern.
Say these things. I don't. They're not necessarily based in fact.
Senator, you must love George McGovern too, right? He's inspired. I mean, we're all roughly the same generation.
Yeah.
Sure.
So he was an inspirational figure for people on the liberal side of things, the left side, whichever side you're on.
The naive side.
I don't want to presume that any side for you.
The naive side.
The naive side, okay. Yeah, to think that George McGovern could beat Richard Nixon is pretty naive.
It is. It really was. And I was going back over a couple things and realizing that one of the things that the campaign literature that we were handing out said that we believed, as George did, that we could cut the defense budget of the United States by about $10 billion and get it back to $30 billion where it belongs.
Where is it now?
I think they spend that in like a week, right? Yeah.
No, the great George McGovern.
So
great
anyway,
George McGovern.
Enough of this. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Miguel del Valle, of course, mayoral candidate in the last go-around and former city clerk and state senator, and we're really glad to have you back on the show again.
Good to be here.
Thanks for being with us. So, there are lots of things that we can talk about today that are local, but why don't we just spend a couple of minutes talking about the funniest part that I've seen on the reaction to the debate was Jon Stewart had a graphic that said the second presidential debate, and then there's a little snipe underneath that says now including the president. So he's back. Yeah. What did you guys think? Was it enough to make you confident that Barack Obama was going to win, or do you think it's over for him?
Well, he showed up at the first debate. I was asked, or after the first debate, I was asked my opinion, and I said, having served with Barack for 8 years, the individual who showed up for that first debate was State Senator Barack, not President Barack.
Very interesting.
And but this time around, and I knew it would happen. President Barack showed up, even though a lot of commentators gave him the edge. I think he did very well. I said, he didn't hit a home run, but I think he hit a triple. But Romney got to first base. I think Romney did not strike out.
No, absolutely not.
But I think it gave everyone a boost because there was a lot of concern out there after that first debate, and as reflected in the polls.
I found it really interesting to watch the CNN flash poll that came on, within about a half an hour, showing that whoever their participants were said that he won, that Obama won like 54 to 35%. It was a huge margin. But then about a half an hour later, they started showing all of the breakouts. And you see that on every single important issue, Romney just creamed him.
This is the first debate or the last debate?
This one on Tuesday.
Among their little studio people?
No, not their studio people, but it was like it was a scientific poll, several hundred people. It was a flash poll. And even in ability to handle health care, Romney creamed him in the CNN poll. So you have it's more than a foregone conclusion, I think, at this point.
Which is more than a foregone? That he won the debate, or he's going to win the election? That
he's going to win the election. Yeah. I mean, no less than John King said, if he doesn't get those numbers changed in the next 2 weeks, he's not going to win this election. So.
You got me really depressed now.
Yeah.
You came on the show, you tell me that Mitt Romney's going to be our next president.
Well, things could be worse.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. We could be living in North Korea.
President Romney, just get used to it. Okay.
No, right. I'm going to have to disagree with you on that.
And Barack Obama will be back in Chicago. Maybe we can get him on the show.
No. Actually, didn't someone say he's not moving back to Chicago?
Yeah, I doubt it. Don't you think he's gonna do like they all do and stay in D.C. Anyway, what are we doing? Yeah. Let's talk about some things that are happening in the news. There's a big story about the company that everybody thought was pretty much wired to get the speed camera contract. Mayor Emanuel has said that they're not, not honest enough, not ethical enough to do it because of some issues with a guy who got a hotel stay for $900 or something like that. But the real question is, the mayor says $30 million of next year's budget is going to come from dinging people $100 for speeding past schools and parks. And how are they going to get those cameras up and running in time?
Well, I was surprised to see that that the mayor is counting on that money so early in the fiscal year, because I'm not sure that all the issues have been resolved. Remember, there was concern about maybe there being a need to revise the statute because under current language, if children are not visibly present, a ticket could not be enforced. And so I'm not sure that has been resolved. They may be counting on introducing an amendment in the fall veto session next month and taking care of that and treating it as cleanup language.
So you're suggesting that
but what I want to say is that I think the reason there's this controversy over this contract is probably because there's so much scrutiny here. And I don't think the mayor wants to take any chance that his plan will in any way get discredited. But the fact of the matter is that we didn't need these cameras from the very beginning. The problems, I think, started when I think to a great extent the media failed to really scrutinize the original proposal. When the mayor's people presented so-called evidence that there was a need, there actually wasn't a need. We already had our speed bumps. We already had our school zone speed limits. This is strictly a revenue generator. The red light cameras last year.
No, they've said it's not.
It is. It's strictly a revenue generator.
I just want that on the record. They said it's not a revenue
generator. And the administration decided that they'd rather go down this road than ask for an increase in property taxes or other fees. But when these tickets start to hit, I think you're going to get a really strong public reaction.
Well, we've said that several times on this program here, that people just don't quite realize what this is going to be. But you're going
to... and they're preparing for the installation of those cameras because you've already see the signage on the streets.
Oh, you've seen it somewhere?
I've seen the safety zone signage on the streets that's new. on streets like Fullerton and other streets, Kedzie, around Humboldt Park.
Really?
And Fullerton near Central Avenue, you'll see that signage. So they're already preparing.
So wait, are you saying that the forgive me for not knowing this as someone who's lived in Chicago all his life, are you saying that the speed limit on like Fullerton and Kedzie is 20 miles an hour in front of a school?
In a small section, we're in front of a school. And that's
Really?
where a lot of people are going to get tripped up. Not that we want to see anyone speeding down those streets when children are present.
Yeah.
Of course, we want people to slow down. But I think that I think we're going to see some real negative reactions to the implementation of this.
You know, the part that I find mildly amusing is where they've come up with this number of 30 million. I've been watching budgets for a long time.
I know you
They
do.
get more losing interest in them, but they always come up with these round figures, these estimations of 30 million. So they have 30 million. I don't know where they figured it. They probably, well, we need to plug this gap. You know, budget is merely a projection of what you expect to spend and what you expect to take in. So you need to have it balanced. So they just came up with the 30 million number, and they may not even have the cameras installed at any time during the year, but there were, you know, they just budgeted 30 million.
But you know, last year or the year before, I think the red light cameras generated almost $70 million.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
And that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know during the campaign I talked about how we shouldn't be abolishing the head tax because it generated less money than the red light cameras did.
Right.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, and that's why every city in America is running to get in line to put up as many red light cameras as they possibly can, because it's a tax. But it's a tax that you can't, when you get that picture in the mail, it's like, well, what are you going to do? I guess I really did run that light. So I go, okay, here's my $100.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that you could generate that, you would know this, but I don't know, how much would you have to raise people's property taxes to raise $70 million? Just not that much, right? I mean, it would be a few dollars, right?
Yeah.
So it just seems to me that would be the more logical and humane way to raise the $70 million.
Well, the way I think politically the way it works is as long as taxpayer A doesn't have to pay the bill, he or she does not care about taxpayer B.
Exactly.
So it's like, well, you ran the light. You know you ran the light.
Exactly
Leave me alone. I don't have to worry about it.
So there is something kind of very modern about this. That it's sort of like this every man for himself kind of environment. That it's like,
welcome to Chicago.
Yeah, welcome to
in
Chicago.
2012.
Well, and it
please run through red lights as much as you can. We need the money.
And it contributes to that oppressive climate that I've talked about often in the city of Chicago, where people feel, hey, I'm getting hit really hard.
No matter where you turn, you're about to violate a law of some kind.
But I think we all agree that it really has nothing to do with safety.
Oh, Ben, how can you say that? You know,
our mayor, I know, may disagree.
What was I just talking about George McGovern? It's like, you modern people today, all you talk about is cynicism.
Well, I never said the word cynicism. I just skepticism. I always say.
So you must like Mayor Emanuel's new budget because he busts open the tiffs. He's finally listening to you after the mayor is finally listening to Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, I really doubt that. What was the very meager amount? I would, of course, end the whole program.
Yeah, of course you would. Yeah.
Mayor Ben would end the program and then immediately retire.
Yeah.
But what is it? I forget. It's some negligible amount.
It's less than $2 million, I think.
Is that what it is?
Comes to the city, but
well,
as you've explained so eloquently over the years, in order to do this, in order for the city to get a little bit of that money, they have to rebate money back to the parks and the schools and all the other taxing agencies.
But the total amount that he's returning to the taxpayers is essentially what he's doing. He's returning it to the taxing bodies. I forget now I'm gonna, was it 30 million? I can't remember the exact. I get my numbers mixed up. I'm still fixated on the 30 million that's plugging in the deficit. So it's a very negligible amount, and I don't even know why he's bothering to do it, frankly.
But that ends up then being like a tiny little windfall for the parks and the schools and the other.
Well, I wouldn't call it a windfall for the schools.
It's $1 million or something.
They're $1 billion in the hole for
Yeah.
next year.
And what
little extra.
but I mean, you could argue that it's money that has been taken away from schools
That's right.
all
It
these
is money
years over
that's
the
been
last
taken away from
20
schools.
years.
Yeah.
It is.
Right.
But
Technically it is.
I'm actually now, since the mayor seems so gung-ho on just spending money on charter schools, which are unregulated and private and not union, I almost don't want him to start returning TIF dollars to the schools, because I don't trust them to spend that money.
Lauren Fitzpatrick had an interesting piece on Sun Times Online this morning about 2 new charter schools that maybe you know more about this than I do, but they got money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, even though they're not authorized.
Yes.
How does that work in Chicago?
Quoting somebody, we were just talking about this. It sure seems like a wire deal.
Yeah.
It's just this story just broke. I just read it actually about 10 minutes ago. But apparently, these two foundations, the Gates Foundation that gives startup money to charter schools, has already authorized a grant to 2 charter proposals that have not been officially approved. So it suggests as though they have a good inkling that the charters will be approved. And as we were talking about before we went on the air, I don't understand why you would be creating new charters at the very time when you're claiming that you have already too many schools. So the charter schools are being brought online at the same time they're proposing to close. How many is it?
Well, no one knows.
Maybe up to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and creating 60 new charters.
yeah, it's just a basic way of diverting money away from unionized schools to non-union schools. I think that's ultimately what this fight is about. It's a union fight. And so
I just want to mention at this point that I know we met at the City Club the other day. We just happened to run into each other. That's how you're here today. We were watching Diane Ravitch speak, and she was talking about this very topic. And I thought that I really recommend it. If you want to go to the City Club website, you can actually stream the video and see it. It's a really interesting conversation. But it's interesting to hear Diane Ravitch's perspective on this, because, as you say, she was part of the George Bush administration for a while, right? But now she seems to be completely on the other side.
Well, I call her the reformer.
Yeah.
Because now she's critical of the very policies that she helped develop at the national level. She was instrumental in creating No Child Left Behind. But I thought it was interesting, the comments she made about charters, because she said that originally the idea of creating charters was for the purpose of working with students in alternative educational programs and creating opportunities for low-income children and children in low-performing situations.
Yes.
And that now that has evolved. And I think she's right. Today, school reform seems to be defined primarily by the development of charters and the creation of a dual system of public education at the expense of neighborhood schools. And while I am not in opposition to having charters as alternatives out there and choices for people, when charters were first presented in the General Assembly, I did vote against the bill.
You were in the General Assembly.
I was in the General Assembly, and I voted against the charters originally for 3 reasons. One, I said we're not ensuring that they will accept English language learners. We're not ensuring that they will accept children in need of special education. And number 3, we should have a separate allocation for charters coming from the state and not take away money from the public schools budget, existing budget. Those three things are happening.
There you go. And one of I thought something she said that was just so spot on is that, as you say, the original idea was that charters would be something that would be brought in as a kind of an experimental alternative to schools that were just chronically failing with underprivileged people. But what they did was they ended up creaming even in the low income areas, they creamed those students out, leaving the traditional public schools with even, how do we put this delicately, even worse students than the student body than they had before. And now they're doing it at the high end also.
They're doing it at the high end also. And there are good charters out there, but of course there are bad charters. And I don't think Chicago, even though the charter school law created at the state level calls for charters to be eliminated at the end of a 5-year period if they aren't performing well. I don't think we've ever denied a license, a charter, I should say, to a charter school after 5 years because of performance.
And Ravitch also brought up something that I guess really had kind of flown under the radar for me, which is how much money a lot of the companies that are running these charter schools are making.
Well, there's a huge
business.
amount of money. And one of the areas that bothers me the most is this virtual charter school.
Yeah, I'd never even heard that term before.
Where kids do everything online. And they don't have to talk to a teacher regularly. And they don't have to visit a location where they are involved with other kids in instruction. And I'm not against online instruction. I think that for credit recovery, for example, for high school students that are in need of catching up because they failed a few courses in their freshman year, and that is then a good predictor of whether or not a child will drop out of school. For those kinds of situations, I think we ought to be making use of online instruction. But even in those cases, there has to be a relationship with a teacher, and there has to be communication on a regular basis, and we have to ensure quality. And one of the things about the rush to privatize is that we're sacrificing quality. We really are. And the sad thing is we're not going to find this out. We're not going to be able to document this until years from now. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And of course, Ben, you've written some really great pieces recently about comparing charter schools to various other operations and drawn your own conclusions about it.
Well, I feel like I always say when I write these stories is I don't like using standardized test scores as a benchmark, but since the charter school advocates are using them as benchmarks and feel no compulsion to be accurate in their use of these scores, I had to weigh in. And the reality is that unionized schools in Chicago, by and large, are outperforming charter schools. So you have to go through 40 unionized schools before you reach a charter school in the ranking on these test scores. So I feel it's really, the public has been misled into believing that charter schools somehow or other have a magical formula because they fire teachers. I think that's what gets to the heart of it, is that charter school teachers are not unionized, and therefore they serve at the command of their superiors. And so the notion is that they've gotten rid of bad teachers and they have good teachers, and that's why they do better. And when, first of all, they don't do better. So I think the public has to really sort of like rethink this whole issue and what's the purpose of a charter school and what impact does the union have on education, if any, so we could have a constructive dialogue. So anyway, that was sort of what I was going at.
Well, again, we have good charters out there, and we have parents who want to send their kids to those schools.
No doubt about that.
We also have parents who get upset when their kids are pushed out of those charters and back into the public schools for whatever reason. Charters can do that, but they were created as options, academic options, and in some neighborhoods people see them as safer options. They feel a lot more comfortable with their kids. They think the discipline is much better. Those are all real, and I don't want to deny anyone those opportunities. But when you are on a fast track towards creating a dual system, and in the process of creating these charters, you're closing schools in neighborhoods and that are already in need of services, dire need of services, and you're pulling out of that neighborhood the one institution that helps keep families involved in the lives of their children, then that's wrong. When you starve Chicago public schools in neighborhoods for the purpose of using dollars to create this dual system, that's wrong. When you say that you're going to close schools because you have too many seats, you're under-enrolled, but at the same time you open up a charter, then,
a part of the reason
how do you reconcile those two? It's
a
a dishonest approach. It's obviously an approach being led by individuals who want to privatize public education.
Let's just quickly change subjects to Toni Preckwinkle. You both know Toni Preckwinkle.
Yes.
She's
on the show with her once.
Yeah, she's making news with all of her new taxes. Let's see. By my count, she wants to tax cigarettes, bullets, guns, and slot machines. And you said golf too?
Golf also.
Golf also. So all those evils, all those terrible habits that people have. Is this the right approach?
Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that in not wanting to raise property taxes, you have to look for other means. And so what politicians do is try to look for taxes or fees or penalties that won't alienate a great number of people. And I suppose it's kind of a prudent decision for Cook County to tax bullets. I don't see a great constituency that's going to be fighting the bullet tax. The cigarette tax is another one. Well,
you'll just buy your bullets.
Yeah, I'll just go down there, right, Indiana, where I buy my cigarettes. So, I think that politically, it's sort of like Mayor Rahm coming up with that speeding in the red zone thing. Well, you're not really going to alienate a large group of people, and you're going to have a source of money. So it gets kind of funny, though. It does, the notion of taxing the bullets.
So would you advise her that this is the right way to go?
I don't have any problems with it.
You don't? Okay.
I don't. And I feel that on the bullet tax, for example, she's raising an issue that we should all be concerned about, and that is the healthcare costs, let alone the suffering,
the
pain
cost
and suffering
of what it costs
to deal with violence in the city of Chicago. And since we can't deal with it on a federal level, our president and his opponent are not tackling that issue. They're very much afraid to take on that issue. We have to deal with it at a local level, and I commend her for putting the issue on the table.
So your successor, the city clerk Mendoza, today announced that she wants to try to sell city stickers year-round.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Oh no, that's a process we started working on. When we started modernizing the clerk's office, we knew that would be the final step. Once we digitized everything and streamlined the process for purchasing stickers. We knew that the next step would be to go year-round, and it's in the reports and the documents that we produce.
Going to have to leave it there, guys. I'm really sorry, but we got a lot more to talk about, but we're out of time. I want to mention, though, that Ben Joravsky next Tuesday night is going to be at the elected school board town hall meeting, right? And we're going to be streaming that live and telecasting it live right here on October 23rd from 7 to 8:30 on CAN TV 27, so be sure you watch that. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom right here on CAN TV. I want to thank Ben Joravsky and Miguel Del Valle for being with us today. And you can see the program just at this address any old time you want and listen to the podcast. We'll be back next week with another edition of Chicago Newsroom, and I'm so glad you joined us and hope to see you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.